June 5, 1967, 7:45 in the morning. Israeli Air Force headquarters, just outside Tel Aviv. Brigadier General Ezer Weissman stood before the communications console. His expression was carved from stone. Within minutes, the bulk of Israel's entire air power was skimming low over the Mediterranean Sea. What was going through his mind in that moment? The Israeli Air Force and General Staff had spent years gathering intelligence, drilling relentlessly to forge this operation into something flawless. Weissman was one of its architects. The pilots had rehearsed their flight paths to target bases again and again. Precision measured in seconds. And now, the moment had come. Let us turn the clock back 3 days. June 4th, 1967. Jerusalem. Defense Minister Moshe Dayan sat in the cabinet room. The walls were closing in on Israel. Egypt's President Nasser had ordered a massive military buildup in the Sinai Peninsula and demanded the withdrawal of UN emergency forces. The Straits of Tiran had been sealed to Israeli vessels. Military pacts with Jordan and Syria were signed. Arab armies were encircling Israel from 3 directions. Dayan stared at the map. Beneath his eye patch, one eye moved quietly across the lines and borders. The question was not whether to strike. The question was when. Recently declassified documents reveal that Israel's leadership, facing the possibility of defeat, had even considered nuclear signaling as a last resort. That is how desperate things had become. Gamal Abdel Nasser, hero of Egypt, the symbol of Arab nationalism. He was certain. The time has come to drive Israel into the sea. 100,000 Egyptian troops, 900 tanks, deployed across the Sinai. Jordanian forces massed on the West Bank, Syrian guns pointed down from the Golan Heights. The Arab world was electrified. But Nasser had made one fatal miscalculation. He believed that the Israeli Air Force was still a small force, still flying the weapons of a previous generation. He could not have been more wrong. 7:45 in the morning. Operation Focus, Mivsa Moked in Hebrew, was unleashed. Why that hour? Israeli intelligence had studied the Egyptian Air Force's daily routine with obsessive precision. Egyptian pilots had just returned from their early morning patrols. It was breakfast time. Their commanders were somewhere between home and their desks. That first blow of the surprise attack decided everything. The Israeli Air Force's tactics were unlike anything the world had seen. Destroy the runways first. Don't go after the aircraft directly. Use special runway cratering bombs developed jointly with France to blast the airstrips apart and cut off any escape. Then hunt down the grounded planes, one by one, until nothing was left. Egyptian air bases across the country were hit in near simultaneous waves. Egypt's fighters never had the chance to spread their wings. Jordanian radar stations had picked up the Israeli formations. Inab, grapes, the warning crackled through in code. But the Egyptian military had changed its communications encryption the day before. The warning was unreadable. In Egyptian Air Force headquarters in Cairo, officers were screaming into their radios. Inshur base, respond. Abu Sawer base, respond. Silence. From the moment the attack began, command and communications collapsed. Situational awareness evaporated with terrifying speed. President Nasser, in his Cairo residence, still could not grasp the scale of what was happening. And still, the bombs kept falling. Operation Focus was designed in waves. The first wave obliterated the runways. Successive waves hunted down whatever remained. And by mid-morning, hundreds of Egyptian aircraft had been destroyed on the ground. Multiple historical sources indicate that the Egyptian Air Force alone lost over 300 aircraft before they could get airborne. Surprise, runway denial, an extraordinarily high sortie rate. Combined, these elements handed Israel air superiority by midday. Military historians would later call this series of air operations one of the most perfect preemptive strikes in the history of modern air warfare. Amman. King Hussein gripped the telephone receiver. That morning, Israel had asked Jordan to stay out of the fight. But the voice on the line, Nasser, said otherwise. Our Air Force is victorious. Now is the time. Strike together. Hussein was 31 years old. The young king had to make a decision. Questions tore through his mind. If Nasser was telling the truth, standing aside now would brand him a traitor in the eyes of Arab history. If Nasser was lying, Jordan's army would be shattered. Hussein had no way to know. Egypt's communications network had already been destroyed. He gave the order. Begin the bombardment of Jerusalem. It was the gravest mistake Jordan would ever make. 12:45 in the afternoon. Everything shifted. Jordanian forces opened fire on Jerusalem and engaged Israeli ground troops. The Israeli Air Force turned its guns east. The same aircraft that had shattered Egypt's air power now banked toward Jordan and then Syria. The tactics honed against Egypt were applied without mercy to Jordan and Syria alike. By evening, the Jordanian Air Force had been effectively annihilated. The Syrian Air Force had suffered catastrophic losses. As the sun set on June 5th, the skies above 3 Arab nations belonged to Israel. Cairo, deep in the night. Nasser read the reports before him. Hundreds of aircraft lost. Multiple runways rendered useless. The Sinai defensive line crumbling under pressure. He buried his face in his hands. That afternoon, he had still allowed the broadcasts to say, "The Arab armies are victorious." But the truth was beyond recovery. Records suggest that for the first time that night, Nasser began to consider the possibility of a ceasefire. But the decision had come too late. The skies were already Israel's. The ground forces moved. In the Sinai, Israeli armored divisions began punching through Egypt's defensive lines. Israeli fighters circled overhead, and Egypt's ground forces found themselves utterly alone. On the West Bank, separate units were already engaging Jordanian troops. What does it mean for a ground army to have no air cover? This war was proving it with brutal clarity. June 7th. Jerusalem. Israeli paratroopers were running across the ancient cobblestones of the old city. The boots of young soldiers struck stone that held 2,000 years of history. When they reached the western wall, one soldier wept. Brigadier General Mordecai Gur reported over the radio, "The Temple Mount is in our hands." For the Jewish people, Jerusalem had been lost since 1948. 19 years. The soldiers understood exactly what this moment meant. And yet none of them could know how complicated a legacy this moment would leave for those who came after. June 8th. An Israeli officer stood on the western bank of the Suez Canal. On the far shore, the Egyptian mainland, the entire Sinai Peninsula had fallen in 3 days. The retreating Egyptian army had suffered devastating losses. What happens when an army with no air cover tries to fall back across open desert roads? There was nowhere to run. Records indicate that in the Sinai fighting, Egyptian forces lost hundreds of tanks, and the human cost in soldiers killed was immense. Nasser's army was broken. One front remained, the Golan Heights. Syria had lost its air force in the opening days of the war, but its fortifications on the ground were formidable. The Golan Heights, a basalt plateau rising 1,000 meters above the valley floor. Syria had spent years turning this ground into an impenetrable fortress. The Israeli assault was grueling beyond measure. Soldiers climbed steep escarpments under fire, pressing toward positions built to kill them. Many fell. But on June 10th, when the summit was reached, the Syrian forces had already begun to withdraw. A ground army with no air cover cannot hold, not for long. That was what these 6 days had proven to the world. The evening of June 10th. In response to multiple UN Security Council ceasefire resolutions, the guns fell silent, front by front. 6 days. Over. In numbers alone, the outcome was overwhelming. Israeli military dead, 776. Arab casualties, though estimates vary widely, totaled roughly 10 to 15,000, killed across all fronts. Israel had seized the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank including East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights, vastly expanding the territory under its control. Everything had changed. In 6 days. And yet Dayan's expression was not that of a triumphant man. He knew. He knew that what this victory had unleashed was not a simple peace. 6 days had given birth to more than half a century of questions. What had this war actually changed? Militarily, it had demonstrated the absolute supremacy of air power in modern warfare. The logic of preemption and information dominance became required study for general staffs around the world. Geopolitically, it had redrawn the map of the Middle East from the foundations up. But what that transformation produced was not resolution. Millions of Palestinians lived in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. The occupation would define their lives and governance structures for generations. The map of 1967 did not answer the questions born from the map of 1948. It piled new, more complex questions on top. Who does Jerusalem belong to? Who holds sovereign claim to the West Bank? Who governs the Golan Heights? These are not questions consigned to the past. In the ongoing statistics of UN agencies and the arguments of international courts, the questions of governance and sovereignty born in 1967 continue to demand answers today. Did the memory of perfect intelligence and preemptive success cast a long shadow over Israel's security doctrine in the decades that followed? The questions born in 6 days are still searching for answers. And so I ask you, history records only outcomes. But within those outcomes live people, each carrying their own story. For those who won in 6 days, it may have felt like a miracle. For those who were defeated, it was humiliation and loss. And for the people who simply lived on that land, 6 days was the beginning of a question that has now lasted more than half a century. Overwhelming military victory does not guarantee lasting peace. So where does peace come from? Does the doctrine of air superiority and preemptive logic that these 6 days demonstrated still hold in today's world? And does the memory of a perfect victory sometimes dull a nation's readiness for the next crisis? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for staying with me until the very end. Here on Turning Point History, we explore the pivotal moments of history, not just through numbers and maps, but through the eyes and decisions of the people who were there. Why was one nation able to redraw the map of the Middle East in 6 days? Why does an overwhelming victory so often leave a complicated legacy? I believe that wrestling with questions like these is how we begin to understand the present and the future. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd be grateful if you would, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Your presence here is what makes this journey possible. Until next time.